Odd time signatures can be pretty intimidating if you're new to music and music theory, but there's really nothing to be scared of. So in this video, what I want to do is talk to you about odd time signatures. What are they? How do we count them? How can we parse them? And I want to show you examples of where we hear this stuff in actual music. Throughout this entire video, as I'm giving you these examples, I'll also be talking to you about how do we write our own odd time signatures and make them more musical. Because this is a big problem when you start writing with odd times, is things sound a little clunky, a little monotonous, and a little repetitive. So there's a lot of tricks we can do to make our odd time sound more musical, and I'll be describing that throughout the video. So let's get started. If you don't know about time signatures, there's two numbers. There's a top number and a bottom number. The top number just tells you how many, and the bottom number tells you of what. So here when I see 4/4, it's telling me I have 4 quarter notes. All right, that bottom number, that 4 means quarter. If I had an 8 down there, it would mean 4 eighth notes. If I had a 16 down there, it would mean 4 16th notes. And that's just telling us how many beats are in my measure. In a measure of 4/4, I have 4 quarter notes. That's just 4 beats. But in a measure of 5/4, well, now I have 5 quarter notes. In a measure of 7/4, I'd have 7 quarter notes, right? But let's take a look at 5/4 specifically. 1 quarter note is just 1 beat. And now I have 5 quarter notes in my measure. So that's 5 beats in my full measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So at the very simplest level, I could write something in 5/4 just by stringing together 5 quarter notes. What I'll do is I'll go in F sharp minor, and I'll just play up 5 notes of the pentatonic minor scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But like I said, this is pretty boring. It is in 5/4 though. If I wanted to make it more interesting, one thing that I could maybe do is start adding in some eighth notes. Just because I'm in 5/4 doesn't mean I have to play 5 quarter notes. I could play 10 eighth notes. I could play some 16th notes. As long as it all adds up to 5 beats, then I'm in 5/4. So let's say instead of just playing these 5 quarter notes, I decide to maybe play some dotted quarter notes instead. Like this, I'll do a dotted quarter note, and then 2 quarter notes. That all adds up to 5 beats. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. This is sounding a little bit more interesting already. And what if I switch things up a little bit? You should recognize that as the Mission Impossible theme song, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which is a great example of 5/4 being used, and it's a very comfortable 5/4. There's really nothing awkward about that 5/4. What helps is you've got that nice, interesting dotted quarter note pattern, but also, if you see what's going on there, I'm in F sharp minor, and then here I play an E, which is my flat 7, and then I play my leading tone right next to it, an F natural, and it takes me to F sharp. When I play E, F, and F sharp, like, after E and F, you know what's coming next. That F sharp is the obvious choice there. So we're repeating our measure as soon as that obvious choice of F sharp comes in, and I think that's what helps this 5/4 groove so well, is that we don't leave that last beat hanging out and like unexpected. You know what's gonna happen next as soon as I play that E, F, F sharp. So you're kind of being cued off. You're being like nudged to believe this is in 5/4, and it sounds natural that way. And I think that's an important part of writing in odd times, is also understanding what are the melodic elements actually doing to assist our odd time. So there's an example of composing with 5 quarter notes. What about 7/4 instead? Well, like I said, that top number tells us how many, and the bottom number tells us what. So here I just have 7 quarter notes instead of 5 quarter notes. So I would count to 7. Now, a quick warning here. The word 7 actually has 2 syllables. So if you try counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you might end up splitting that 7th beat into 2 beats instead. So I kind of recommend maybe just use the word sev instead, or just say 7 really fast and be aware that it's actually 2 syllables there. So it's not the most convenient way to count to 7. Sometimes I'll just subdivide and I'll just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that way I can avoid saying the number 7 altogether. So I'm gonna play around in B here right now. I'm gonna be in B pentatonic minor, and if I just play 7 quarter notes up the B pentatonic scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Once again, I'm in 7/4, but it's pretty boring, right? So what I'm gonna try and do is add in some eighth notes, and maybe we'll add them in 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What if I made my eighth notes swung eighth notes instead of straight eighth notes? I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If I start changing the notes around a little bit, you'll hear this riff come through, which is Money by Pink Floyd. And that's just probably the most famous example of 7/4 being played. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Money! So that's dealing with odd times and quarter notes, but what about when you get into odd times with an 8 on the bottom? Something like 9/8. Well, 9/8 would mean I have 9 eighth notes. And I want you to think of that like a full measure of 4/4 plus an extra eighth note. So you'll have a full measure of quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, then 1, 2, 3, 4. That half note, that half of a quarter note, is at the end of my entire measure of 4/4. 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1. Now this is much more rare than just using an odd number of quarter notes. So you're going to have to search a little farther to find examples of it in common music. The example I'm going to give you of specifically 9/8 is from Jeff Beck, the song Scatterbrain on the album Blow by Blow. Now you can hear I'm counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, 1, but I could also just count to the number 9. That's a legitimate way to count odd times as well. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, 1 and 2 and 3 and... Now it's pretty rare to hear these odd time signatures build up an entire section or an entire song, especially with something like 7/8 or 9/8. We usually hear these things as just one little measure of that thing happening at maybe the end of a section to help us transition into something different. You can hear something like this in Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles. Most of that song is in 4/4, but after the second chorus we go into a bridge section that uses a quick measure of 7/8 to kick us into another measure of 6/8, then a measure of 5/8, and then back to 4/4. It's pretty complicated for a Beatles song. You might think that most of those songs are simple, but we've got some pretty complicated time signatures going on there. So if I try counting over the top of it, it would sound like this. Same kind of thing in the song Classical Gas by Mason Williams. Most of that song is in 4/4. There's scattered measures of odd times though, and there's a measure of 7/8 at the end of the chorus that takes us straight into a measure of 6/8 once again, just as a transitional bump, almost like a speed bump to get us out of that 4/4 feel and into something more rambunctious. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1 and 2 and 3 and 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 1 and 2 and 3. Lastly, let's talk about odd time signatures with a 16th note on the bottom, something like 7/16 or 17/16. So if I've got something like 7/16, that just means I have 7 16th notes. You would count that 1 E and a 2 E and 1 E and a 2 E and 1 E and a 2 E and. And once again, we don't even have 2 full quarter notes here. I do want you to think about the quarter note in relationship to this. I've only got 1 full quarter note, and then I've got 75% of a quarter note. 1 E and a 2 E and 1 E and a 2 E and 1 E and a 2 E and 1. And understandably, this is fairly difficult to compose with, and it can be pretty jarring, but it's used to great effect in progressive rock. A lot of progressive rock and progressive metal is meant to keep you off your toes rhythmically. So stuff like 7/16 and 15/16 pops up pretty frequently in prog rock like Haken or Dream Theater. At the end of Home by Dream Theater, there's a quick little line of 15/16 that sounds like this. 20 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and 1 and a 2 and a... So hopefully this gives you some ideas of where you might hear odd time signatures and a little bit of information on how to compose with them better. But really, why should you be using odd times? In my opinion, odd times give a lot more power to good old 4/4. 4/4 is amazing. It's a great, great time signature. It has so much power, so much energy. But it kind of loses its currency when all you get is 4/4. If you have something off-settling like 9/8, then all of a sudden 4/4 is going to groove really hard when you break into it. Most of writing good music is about contrast, and that doesn't just mean melodically or harmonically or with timbre, it also means with rhythm. And you'll hear a lot of good examples of 4/4 sections driving harder than they should just because they were surrounded by more disjointed time signatures. So I think that's one of the big values of working with odd times. Also, it's just more fun sometimes. Working with odd times can be a taxing event on your brain, and it can really keep you active in keeping count, as opposed to just, internally feeling the beat. And I find it's really good exercise. I find a lot of fun stuff that comes out of working with odd times, and it opens up a whole new box of shapes and patterns and rhythms and grooves. It can be hard to work with, and in my experience, the hardest part is making it musical. So people, when they hear it, they don't just instantly think it's just random chaos. Something like that Mission Impossible theme song is a perfect example of an odd time that just fits in perfectly. And to me, that's the goal, is to be able to use these things just as seamlessly as we might use 4/4. It's important to remember that this is only odd for Westerners. There's parts of the world where 9 is on equal footing with 4. In India, for example, there's many of their rhythmic cycles are based on 7, 9, 11. Polyrhythms are very commonplace in Carnatic music. So for us, this might seem pretty weird, but it's important to keep in mind that a lot of parts of the world, this is just music. They don't see anything special about 5 or 7. To them, it's just as legitimate as 4. And I think that's a cool way to think. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something from this video. If you enjoy videos like this, please like, subscribe, comment, and share this video with your friends. And I could use your help on my Patreon page. These lessons would not be possible without your support, and I appreciate that. So I plan on seeing you in the not so distant future.